那我们接下来欢迎印度犯罪防治及受害者关怀国际基金会执行长，也是WeCan 全球网络主席的Prasanna 女士的一个分享。我们再次掌声欢迎她，谢谢。
A very good morning to all of you, and I thank the organizers, the Garden of Hope, for giving me this opportunity to be here for the second time. Thank you. For those of you who are not familiar with where India is, I just thought I'd quickly show you this map so that you recognize where we are in Asia. And where I come from is down south here. Okay, that's where is Tamil Nadu, and that's where I come from. A little bit about our country very quickly. We are reaching 1,210.19 million in 2011. And you can see the percentage of males and females. And the next bullet, which probably doesn't make sense at all, 38,782 women and girls in shelter homes as of 2010. You can see the population figure and you can see the number of shelters we probably have. And these are mostly for street children, trafficked women and girls, HIV and AIDS, women in distress, and drug treatment. There are very, very few shelters for domestic violence victims. They are mostly for distressed women and mostly for those of the lower socioeconomic groups. And before I come to challenges, which are more or less all of you have been talking about yesterday and today, I would like to take you to the model that we follow in our shelter and how we started to form it, and that would speak more about the challenges. Three women started this organization way back in 2001. We were from the criminology department in the Madras University, and we had gone to Japan for a 2-month course on victimology. As part of the course, we went through the victim assistance centers, and we thought, we're coming back to India, we need something like that. We want to start victim assistance centers where any crime victim could come for help. At the end of 1 year, we saw that 90% of those who came to us were domestic violence victims, mostly from the middle and the upper class. Okay. And while we tried to deal with the cases, we thought something was wrong, because when we negotiated and the man promised that everything would be okay and we sent them home, the same night she would call us and we could hear people banging on the door, and she said, "You asked me to go back with this man." And we thought that there was something wrong in the way we were dealing with the cases. Then 2 of us traveled to the US. We stayed in different shelter homes, we took different training programs, and then came back with an understanding that domestic violence is a crime, not like all other crimes, but you need more of understanding. And in India, we have socio-economic different groups like the lower, the middle, and the upper class. And although in every other crime or social work, we concentrate more on the poor, domestic violence is some crime that happens across all borders. And there were no services at all for the middle and the upper class. Okay? And that's why we thought that we should go ahead and have a center just for domestic violence survivors. Astitva, which means identity, was started in 2003 after finding that we could not place our clients in shelters, and even a couple of them where we placed them, they would say that it is our case, and once you have given us the client, and you should stay back. Okay, we did not have anything to do with the client. So that's when we decided that we need to have our own shelter. And this is more like an apartment, while all other government shelters that we network with right now also, about 5 or 6 of them are for distressed women. Okay, so ours is the only undisclosed shelter in the city. To divide our work into 4, stopping the violence, establishing safety, empowerment, and healing. It comes in the support. And rehabilitation, of course, livelihood options, independent living and community, integrating into the community and living in the community. Okay, the model we follow is a solution-focused approach. I thought it might be interesting to you. To find the difference, I've brought this slide. Okay, solution-focused approach talks more about engaging in solution talk rather than problem talk. We talk less of the problem and more of the solutions, and focus on the strengths and competencies of the survivor rather than talking about problems and the pathology, etc. Okay. So it's based on positive change, while in problem focus we are talking about understanding the problem of violence. Why did this happen? Why did I do it? Why am I? More than that, concentrating on herself. Okay, and what are her strengths? What are her competencies? And to notice the fluctuations she is making every day. Okay, towards the goal of changing. Okay, and this approach takes you away from the past. Okay, because as you are all working with domestic violence, when the survivor comes to us and starts talking, it is more about the past, what has happened. Okay, it is very, they talk about it all the time. Okay, so this approach moves them away from the past and engages the clients to visualize a future without violence in their relationships. We should keep in mind here, at least way back in India, that most of the clients would like to go back to the families, to go back to the batterers. Okay, and most of the time, the social workers feel that we have put in so much of effort, but in the end of it, they're going back to their to the batterer. Okay, and in this approach, the satisfaction is that you empower the client in the thinking process, where it is okay for her, even if she goes back, you're happy because she will learn to stop the violence, which is more important. And we are not, it is not important for us whether she's staying with him or she's staying outside or whatever. So directing the attention to helpful things that they are doing and realizing the desired change. Okay, we help them to notice their fluctuations. For example, she might say that I was cooking and he came into the kitchen and I just switched off the stove and I went away from the place. It might be as a way of narrating that she's talking, but the social worker notices these points and tells her that, okay, that was a way that you avoided the violence. Okay, so while the client talks, you notice these points and put it before her so she feels good about it. I am doing something about it. Okay, emphasizing their strengths and resourcefulness, no matter how small or insignificant it may be. Okay, that she, she did not depend on him for money to buy groceries, but she did something else, for example. Okay, to bring out these small things to show her that she's already taking the steps towards non-violence. Okay, and so a solution-focused approach becomes a validating process to construct a violence-free reality and rediscover the resources they have to achieve this end. Okay, the clients construct their own plan for the future. We do not tell them what to do, what not to do, what is right, what is not right, but they construct their own plan based on the resources that they see. Not they have, that they see. Okay, so what is not there, then you will be helping them to find a direction to those resources. Okay, in that way we are not there to give them everything and then say, for example, the project money stops, then what do you do? Okay, so here you are helping them to construct and carry on with their lives so that it doesn't matter if you are there or not, or if she goes back or not, but she will know how to go about her life. Okay, for example, a violence-free reality may involve staying in and changing the relationship with her partner or leaving the relationship permanently, something that hitherto she is not able to do. Okay, and I'm sure you believe in this too, that the client is the only knower and the expert of the unique experiences, realities and experiences. Although we say that domestic violence survivors have these characteristics, etc., each of them are unique. Each of the experiences is unique and it's only something that they will know. Okay, there is no optimal solution or the best approach. Okay, we cannot tell them that this is the way, this is the best thing that you have to do at this time. Okay, I know there is, we do have something like, if she's not able to decide, we can decide for her. Okay, at times. I know there's something like that we do follow. But most often there's no optimal solution or there's no best solution. So they define the goals and they fully own the work for a more satisfactory life. It is they set the goals for themselves and they look at the resources and they work towards it. Okay, the focus of the shelter workers therefore is to emphasize on self-motivation instead of educating the women about their rights. Of course that is important, but you don't keep doing that the only thing, and helping them obtain needed resources only. Okay, not make any assumptions about what is best for the clients, nor educate them as to what is the right way. Believe in the uniqueness of each client's experience, and the solution is an individual's construction and has to come from within the person, which is most important. Okay, we can't give them solutions, but we can teach them how to create the solutions. Okay, the ethos of working, the shelter worker mostly active listening is something probably all of us know. Full attention to the content, meaning and feelings of the survivors. Attending the whole. Notice themes, patterns and implications. For example, in India, we have a varied multicultural country. We have different religions, we come from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different cultural practices, and it's very, very important to find out what are the patterns, what are the implications which probably comes out from these. And suspending judgments, putting judgments aside, that is also very common. And surfacing assumptions, uncover these beliefs and facts. Okay, bring it up, during support group meetings or whatever, and then deal with those issues. And sharing truth as I statements. Okay, most often social workers say you. Okay, it's better we find construct our sentences to use I, and understand discovery mode, which is understanding the change. Okay, change, not just looking at change in the client, but looking at our own changes too. With every client, probably we make a change, something that we need to think about, because we also come from the same cultural backgrounds. We are no different. This is a little more about the last point that I said, that okay, not just looking at the behavior and appearance of the person. Probably she's very short-tempered, and at times a social worker might say that, oh, this is why probably he was hitting her. This is why probably she did this. This is why probably she deserves it. Okay, we should not just look at the behavior or the appearance, but we should look at assumptions, the history, feelings, cultures, the cultural background she comes from, the belief system that she comes from, more than looking at what she is in the outside. Okay. The empowering process, the foundation of that is the unique life context of the client that we just spoke about, and their own resourcefulness for achieving her goals. Okay, based on this, the empowerment process that leads to this 4 goals is discovering her life goals. Okay, connecting with her life goals. This is a huge process that takes 75% of her work and amplifies those life goals. Okay, this process helps the client in taking her life forward, whether the next, not depending on what her next decision is. She might come to us and say that, I'm sorry, I think I want to go back to my husband. We are happy with it because we know we have not empowered her in the sense of finding a job or anything like that, but we have empowered her in identifying her goals, in identifying herself. Okay, and when this happens, wherever she is, the violence stops. She will not let somebody abuse her. And that's what we want. So this empowering process brings to an internal locus of control, a positive sense of self, more aware of their needs and resources. Coming to needs and resources, I would like to add that at least our experience is that most of the client will say that you promised to give this, okay? But then now if you don't give it, then how do I go ahead? You promised that I will get a job, but then now when I don't have it, how will I go ahead? Okay, or put them into a training, for example. And I should mention here that we do not have any occasional programs that we put them on to, like weaving or, we don't do that. But we ask the client to identify, irrespective of the age, on what they wanted to do and what they would wish to do. So we have clients who want to be beauticians, we have clients who want to become researchers, lab assistants, we have one client who wanted to become a pilot, and she's a pilot now. Okay, so we believe in them identifying on what their passion is, and not telling them that this is the job, this is the occasion training that we have which you have to attend to. Okay, so more aware of their needs and resources, develop viable solutions appropriate to those needs and life context, self-determined, and decides to leave or stay with her partner. That's the process that we follow, and I should tell you that this process came about with a challenge that for nearly 4-5 years, while we are about 11 years now, and for the first 4-5 years when we worked, we were wondering like what we were doing, because every time a client came and every time we spent hours and hours on the client, the next would be that I think I want to go back. Or they would come into the shelter, but they wouldn't stay and they would find an excuse to go back. Or the support of the family is not there, who are constantly saying, what are you doing? Okay, just come back. And this was very, it was more a disappointing way of working. And that's when we decided that it doesn't matter as long as the client comes and sits before us. Okay, the listening to the problem does happen, but the solution-focused approach starts from day one that she sits before us, and there our goals are met with. Once we have empowered her in this way, it doesn't matter where she is. Okay. So the shelter process is, as all of you are also following, it's an undisclosed shelter. We have an intake process. We do a risk assessment for lethality and mental status. They can stay for a maximum of 1 year. Okay. We do network with other shelters, so we assess the client, and then if safety is not an issue, and if they don't have children, then we refer them to the other shelters. If they are middle income group clients, they will not stay, and that's reality, that they will not go and stay in the distress shelter for distressed women. Then we offer our shelter. It's more like an apartment. Of course, we give individual therapy, group therapy. We use a lot of art-based therapy, play therapy, support groups, mentorships, etc. Legal support, child care. What else? Most of these are. And the last but second point, grocery support for 1 year. Okay, we do not have like some other developed countries. We do not have food stamps. We do not give special schemes. We do not have any schemes for domestic violence. On the part of the government, we have absolutely no help. Okay. And when these, so as a support, and most of our funds come from the community. We do not have any funds. We generate the funds from the community. We have women who give groceries. We have, as kgs of rice or dal or whatever. And we support the survivors for a period of 1 year with groceries, etc. And if they want to work from home, we have a tie-up with organization in Germany which sends us sewing machines. So as a second job, we provide them sewing machines. Okay, and the second shelter that we have is a recovery and healing center for burn survivors. Okay, I'll quickly take you through this, which might be interesting for you. We work with a local government hospital since 2005. An average of 150 to 200 women every month out of burns, every month. Okay, they are mainly from the lower socioeconomic. 75% are fatal, third-degree burns. 90% is due to domestic violence, either self-inflicted or inflicted by husband and in-laws, but not. I would say not even 0.1% of, even if inflicted by husband and in-laws, and even if she dies, the case doesn't go further because most of the time he's absconding. And the power of women that I don't know what we should be commenting on, but the moment the incident happens and she is traveled to the house, he will convince her not to go forward with the case. Okay, and most of the time she says that she did it herself or the stove burst or whatever. Okay, so it's a recovery process for women. We have it's a shelter cum rehabilitation center. We look at physical rehabilitation, psychosocial care, where we do not encourage her to close her face but open it, integrate her back into the community and so on. Okay, these are some of the challenges which actually I was supposed to be talking to you about, but I know that it's almost the same in every country, so I wanted to talk more about our work than this. Your client level, we have the same problems that you have. At the structural and functional level, finding a shelter, we almost every 1 year or 2 years we change the shelter, and it's a task for finding the right landlord. And safety, security issues, financial resources, equipment, tools and so on. Thank you very much.